officially have read my first Stephen King novel, which is crazy. I know Stephen King is this huge author, and I have just been hesitant to try his work. I am not a person who loves horror stories, and for some reason I had in my head that all of his books were going to be like steeped in horror, heavy with like gory details or graphic, and I was like, I just don't think Stephen King is for me. Well, my husband was looking at some books that he was thinking about reading, and he's like, I think you should read the blurb to this one. It sounds like something you would be into. And I was like, I don't know. And I read it, the blurb. And before this video, I reread the blurb so I could make sure I didn't talk about any spoilers. I'm also going to say I didn't even read the blurb entirely. I read the first paragraph of the blurb, and I knew I was hooked and didn't read any more, because as I was rereading the full blurb, I was like, there were some spoilers in here. At least for me, there were things that were a shock to me when I read it that are actually printed on the blurb. So if you want to be as surprised as I am, just read the little top part, and if you know you're hooked, go into it blind from there and you will be equally as shocked. So this book is The Institute by Stephen King, and it's a thick one, but so good. I will say, the blurb starts off telling us about this little boy who is kidnapped in the middle of the night from his home, and he is taken to the Institute, which we don't really know what that is. It's a place for children. He shows up, and he is in a room that looks identical to his own bedroom at home, except for the fact that it lacks a window, and it is not his home. So we don't know where in the world we are, why they took him, anything like that. And we are following, his name is Luke. We are following Luke's story. So I start this one expecting to jump right into Luke being kidnapped. And instead, we start off in some country little town following this ex-police officer who is kind of hitchhiking his way up north. It totally threw me for a loop. So much so that I was probably an hour into the audiobook, and I was questioning, did I even start the correct book? I don't see what this has to do at all with Luke. And I knew Luke was from a different state, Minnesota. So I knew from the blurb that Luke was from Minnesota. And yet here we are following this guy who's hitchhiking from Florida up the coast. And I'm telling you, I was an hour into the audiobook thinking I must have started the wrong Stephen King book. So much I paused it, went, looked up the cover, double checked that against my audiobook, and I was like, yeah, no, this is the same book. What is going on here? Am I just crazy? I will say, it threw me for a loop, that whole part one, because it didn't match what I went in expecting. But you just have to trust the process, because it does all tie together, and it was the same book, obviously. And this one just blew my mind. I could not stop reading it. It was so addictive. Honestly, I don't know how Stephen King readers read his books back to back. My heart was just palpitating through the entire book. I was on the edge of my seat. I was just this razzled mess. And I couldn't look away. It was amazing. I was surprised too at just the pacing of the novel, and that he can maintain this climatic, intense pacing for as long as he can without it feeling overdone for the reader. I vividly remember at one point in the audiobook, I had about 5 hours of the audiobook left, and I felt like I was at the end. I felt like this has to be the climax. This has to be the big ending. I don't know where this book can go after this point. And I'm telling you, the emotions were just sky high and had me enthralled. And yet he did. He gave me another 5 hours of the audiobook, and I loved every second of it. I did not think it was too long, did not think it was too short. It was the perfect length, and I was just left flabbergasted. I obviously gave this 5 stars and will be reading more Stephen King, though to admit, I do think I need a tiny break, because I don't know that my anxiety myself could endure a bunch of his books back to back. They are so good. I'm thinking I must read one a month is kind of where I feel like I'm at right now. But this I wouldn't capture this as a horror genre. There were some detailed parts of it, but I don't think I would say it was excessive gory, because like I said, I don't enjoy gore myself, and I loved every part of this book. Now, it does have some triggers with as far as like institutionalizism and abuse with children. Obviously, the main character is kidnapped, so there are some triggers in there for those who need those. Check them out. I would classify this as a psychological thriller, but that also has some sci-fi elements to it, which were pleasantly surprising. If you love this book, I would also recommend the show The OA, which I watched on Netflix a few years ago and was absolutely amazing. That show reminds me of this book, or this book reminds me of that show, however way you want to take that. So, The Institute by Stephen King. Loved it. 5 stars. Let me know what your favorite Stephen King book is, or especially if you've read this one and you want to recommend me something that's similar to this one. Because like I said, I am excited to read more, and